I would say, a lot of lawyers now, and even a lot of young people now, Sandy, are getting prenups before they get married.
Was gonna ask you about that, to talk about that. I know nothing about that, so let's
So,
educate people as much as possible.
well, there's two things I would say. If I don't know that I agree with a prenup, but I don't know that I disagree with a prenup. How's that? I think if you're getting married for the second time, you should do a prenup because if you have assets that you want to go to your kids and not everybody's kids, that's a way to designate that, right?
Mhm.
Um, if you're divorced.
Is it then if you have a prenup, but then is it everything you accumulate then when the 2 of you are
You would
married
just
is
you would
is
specify that. It's like a divorce, but before you get married. So it's like a document that would govern your divorce in the event of a divorce. So that's kind of a prenup is like that. I mean, you're saying I've mediated with a couple people of prenups and it specifies this is much your maintenance is going to be, this is what your parenting is going to be. So it's already pre-decided, you know. Um
so
a
it
lot.
addresses everything you're bringing in and everything that happens during.
Yes. And if you're divorced for this reason, then this. If you're divorced for this, I mean, this is horrible. But some people have prenups that if the woman gains more than 20 pounds, she gets this amount of money. Isn't that ridiculous?
Are you kidding me?
No. But I
Oh
mean, I
gosh.
I actually, in terms of the no fault divorce, I
I guess if you lost a lot of weight, that could be good motivation. I always say with my horses, they wear grazing muzzles, and before I lost all this weight, I'd often say, "I wish somebody would just make me wear a grazing muzzle."
yeah, yeah.
No,
I
that's awful.
I think it would be good if you want to have an adultery clause in there. I actually don't mind that because that to me brings back the fault back into the divorce. I mean, we come to this no fault divorce,
Mhm.
and that at least would say, "Hey, if you're gonna have a commit adultery, then you're gonna pay for it in our divorce settlement." I don't mind that.
Mhm.
I don't mind that because, I can remember, oh,
It's a consequence. You're just
yeah,
deciding for
yeah,
both of you,
yeah,
this is what we're willing to pay as a consequence if we make this decision.
yeah, yeah.
That's
I
interesting.
remember my ex was trying to get me to sign some kind of parenting thing. Oh, and he had been having an affair for 3 years, and he said, "Why won't you sign this? It's a contract. I would have to abide by it." And I just said, Our marriage was a contract, and you didn't abide by that, so why would I believe you now?" And he was nothing, crickets. But yeah, you're right. It's a consequence, and I don't mind that. I'm not thrilled with the idea of a prenup because you're kinda, like, talking about your divorce ahead of time, but I don't mind the idea of a consequence.
Mhm.
The other thing I would say, and this isn't really about divorce, but a lot of people are, cohabitating, right? So what happens is, for whatever reason, people decide they wanna not get married, but they wanna live with their boyfriend or girlfriend, buy a house together, have kids together, commingle their money, maybe say they're common law married, maybe not. That's another topic we should talk about is common law married.
Yeah.
And so what happens is now they are not, they're breaking up and they've got property together and they have kids together. So now we have to figure out, are they common law married? Because if they're common law married, which not a lot of states have that, Colorado still does, and I think they're really trying to get rid of it. Common law married is really defined by 3 things. Do you live together? Do you commingle your money? And do you hold yourself out as married? So, there's not really a time limit. If you claim each other on your taxes, if you claim each other for health insurance purposes, that's really good evidence that you're saying
Mm.
that you're married, right?
Yeah,
Because
I always thought there was a time limit, but you're saying no. Interesting.
no. Um, and so if you don't agree that you're common law married, or you just say that you're not common law, you agree that you're both not common law married, but you've bought a property together and now one wants to move out or one wants to stay. You can't agree on that property. Now it's not governed by divorce laws, it's governed by civil laws, and it's called a partition thing where you have to go through a whole different court if you can't agree to decide on how to dispose of this house and who gets how much equity and who gets to keep it, besides can you afford to keep it or whatever. Whereas if you are married, your property is gonna be, governed under divorce laws, so, if you and I are married, Sandy, and the house was in your name only, but we acquired it while we were married, just because a house is in your name only doesn't mean it's just yours. It would be both of ours together because it's marital property, regardless of whose name it's in. That's different if you're not married. That could be a whole different thing. So I always tell people that if they're going to live together, they need to put together a cohabitation agreement, similar to a prenup, right?
Mm.
Put together a cohabitation agreement that handles how you're going to pay the mortgage together or who handles the bills or whatever. And if you were to separate or break up, how are you going to separate the stuff you bought together? Or just
So
define, pre-marriage stuff, whatever. I mean,
mhm. When I
pre-relationship.
coach business owners and they are all excited about having a partner, I
Yeah.
just say, "Oh, don't do that. Like, don't ever
Yeah.
have a partnership." And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Are you married? Uh-huh. Do you know how hard marriage is? Uh-huh. Okay, now you're gonna marry a business partner.
Yeah.
So if you do that, then just like you,
Yeah.
figure out how you're gonna split up
Yeah.
before you legally get into partnership. Because if something happens and
Mhm.
quite frankly, most partnerships do not last in business. Most of them, people want to go and then it's hard to figure it out because there's money and emotion.
Yeah.
So if a couple were going to do that, had been doing that, they had been cohabitating, and the typical divorce courts don't govern that. Could they come to you to mediate?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mediation is just negotiating a solution for anybody. I do real estate mediation, I've done landlord tenant mediation, I've done like a business dispute resolution. Here's the thing, um a lot of people now put a mediation clause in any kind of contract that they have a person sign. Like I have rental property and I have in my rental property contract, we will mediate if there's a dispute between us before anyone can pursue a solution in court, right? So same thing with if they let's just say they were unmarried, they couldn't decide on the property. One of them made a motion in court. The judge would say you have to go to mediation first.
Mhm.
So they would come to somebody like me.
Even
Absolutely.
like in every real estate contract, do you agree that before you would go to court, you're gonna go to mediation, then arbitration, then
Yeah.
court?
Yeah,
So
it's that's for small claims court, that's for almost everything now, Sandy, because the courts are like, "Please figure it out yourself. We don't wanna deal with you. We've
mm,
got too much to do," you
mhm,
know? So they
and
really want
so
people to.
cut and dried for them. It's like they're
Mhm,
they're listening to the
mhm.
person, I guess, give the most convincing testimony and then or a lawyer doing that and then deciding. Again, I wanna put my life in the hands of
Yeah.
somebody who doesn't really know my life, right?
Yeah, they want everybody to attempt mediation first. That's why, when we do a real estate mediation, it cracks me up because they're pay people that are just, disputing over like $500 or something like that. And they're paying me 400 to do their mediation. I'm like, okay, that's the dumbest thing ever.
Yes,
Just split the baby and figure it out. You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they're so emotionally invested. They're like, it's the principle of the thing. I'm like, well, you need to have some practicality. How much is your principle worth? You know?
Do you ever I mean, we are both Christ followers, people of faith. Do you
Mhm.
ever have people come in and you're able to, um, in that discussion, discern maybe they don't want to get divorced? You're able to have that kind of conversation with them, or usually at that point, are they like, "We're done," or one of them's done?
It really depends on the situation, I have to be a third party neutral
I
in
mean, I
in
realize you're not a therapist. Maybe
yes,
someone with therapy.
professionally speaking, I have to be a third party neutral, right? But a lot of times, like, I have lawyers that use me in mediation sometimes, like, I had a mediation a while ago, and the wife was a stay-at-home mom, and she was a Mormon, right? And so she's very conservative, and the husband was pursuing the divorce, and she was really stuck. She was stuck emotionally and could not negotiate anything, just kept repeating the same loop of hurt
Mm,
and betrayal and all that kind of stuff. So the lawyers like to use me because when we're using lawyers, I go between room and room, like Zoom room to Zoom room. And
Mhm.
so I was really able to, for lack of a better word, minister to that person in her hurt and say, "Listen, I understand what you're going through. I have had those feelings before," and bring some validation to her that helped her become unstuck, and then we came to resolution.
Mhm.
You lawyers don't have that capacity and they don't care.
Right.
Lawyers are about the facts, lawyers about results, lawyers about we need lawyers. I'm
Mhm.
glad I had a lawyer,
Mhm.
but they're not there to and you don't want them to hold your hand because they charge way too much to do that,
Yeah, no kidding.
right? So,
Yeah.
you don't
Go to
want
your
them.
therapist or a
Yeah,
friend. Don't discuss it with the attorney.
exactly. But, sometimes people need to be validated in their feelings before they can move forward, and sometimes I'm able to do that in private mediations and sometimes not, you know?
Yeah,
I would
you're really good at being able to say, "I understand," and da 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 da, and here's the reality, this is gonna happen whether you want to or not, so let's talk about how to get you some choice or, some power or something in it,
hard.
because
It's hard.
that's
Yeah,
the part where people are like, they haven't woken up to the reality that, "Oh, this is gonna happen. Like, there's nothing I can do to stop this."
yeah. And I was like that for a year, Sandy, so I don't judge anybody for that.
Mhm,
I was totally like which is why I got into mediation because I just was like, nobody's giving me good advice. Like, I don't have anyone telling me anything true. I'm figuring this out on my own.
mhm,
And so I wanna be somebody can be like, "Hey, I understand you wanna get divorced,
mhm,
but this petition's been filed. You're court ordered to figure it out. Let me help you figure it out."
mhm. Yeah, I
Mhm.
would say even though, like, in Tom's situation, they figured it out, I know they consulted with an attorney so that they would do their paperwork. I think the attorney maybe even reviewed their stuff and made sure dates were, so
Right.
I think, it is rare that somebody, unless they've, maybe gone to law school or done
Yeah, or
something,
their family lawyer. Yeah, exactly.
so even if they wanna do that to be able to go to you, and I think even at that time, you still had to go to one mediation session.
Yeah. Well, I've had people that are ordered to mediation because they tried to submit their paperwork on their own. They got to court, the court reviewed it and said, "This is junk. You have to go to a mediator and clean this up." So then they had to go to a mediator because they didn't separate their property right. The thing about people don't understand, again, some people are too loosey-goosey and some people are too freaked out.
Mhm,
Whatever you represent in your sworn financial, all your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, your boats, your Bitcoin, everything, we have to handle it in the, separation agreement. Even if everybody's keeping their own stuff, you still have to write it down. Well, people don't do that, so those 2 documents don't match, and then the courts are like, "Well, we don't know what's real. You need to go to a mediator."
mhm.
So
So
people think they know what they're doing, they don't.
after all this is done and you're divorced and you have this agreement and then one party doesn't abide by the agreement, can you come back to mediation, or at that point are you having to hire an attorney or
It depends on the issue. If it's parenting, you always have to go to a mediator first. Part of your parenting plan is that you say, "We will attempt mediation before either party files a motion in court." So, anything that's about parenting, you have to go to mediation first.
but I'm talking about even after you're divorced, if you have a parenting plan and one person isn't abiding by it, you would go back to mediation to talk about that?
Yes. Yeah, let's just say, like, in my case, my ex was not exercising his parenting time. He had, like, 125 overnights, and he was not doing anything. And, child support, um, correlates with overnights, right? So I was like, "You're not exercising. So either we get together and we figure out what your new child support number is gonna be and what your new parenting plan is gonna be, or we're gonna go to court." So he and I sat down together. At that time, I'd been a mediator. I knew what the what was. So we sat down together and we figured out a new, parenting and child support number. But, yeah, if someone's not exercising, you have to go back, for whatever reason. Or if, for example, you wanna change the parenting time, you don't like 50-50, or you wanna change your type of 50-50, or just whatever, you have to go to mediation first.
What about financial? What about you agree on financial and then the person isn't paying you or,
Yeah,
you know.
that's a different situation because let's just say you're getting $2,000 a month in spousal support and that person stops paying you. Now you can file a petition in court for contempt of court, for them to compel. The court may or may not order you to mediation for that because that's more cut and dried. See, the thing that people don't understand is once you file this documents in court, it's a court order and now is subject to the jurisdiction of the court. If you don't pay your child support, they're going to garnish your wages.
Mhm.
They're going to keep your tax returns, all that kind of stuff. They could put a judgment on you, all kinds of things like that. Spousal support, and let's just talk about spousal support for a second
Mhm.
because child support is always renegotiable depending on overnights and income, right? So let's just say after the divorce, one party gets a new job and they make a lot more money than when the initial parenting plan was figured out. Now you can recalculate child support, so you can either do that together or sometimes they've got to go back to a mediator because they need help talking to each other. Spousal support can be either contractual, meaning you can agree. When I got spousal support, it was contractual for a certain amount of years, a certain amount of money, never to be changed, whether I made more money or he made more money. You can only get contractual spousal support in mediation. If you go to court, you're always going to get modifiable. So modifiable means it can be modified just like child support in amount and duration. So let's just say one person goes back and they start making a lot of money. Let's say one person's getting spousal support and that person goes back and starts making a lot of money. The person paying spousal support can say, I want to renegotiate this. You don't need spousal support anymore. You're making enough money. Now you can renegotiate and decide on a different number for that spousal support.
And it could go the other way too, right? Somebody agrees they're gonna pay this much and suddenly they lose their job or they don't have as much money, then they can go back and say, I'm giving you less because I make less.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
that's kind of a riskier
Yes.
proposition maybe in
Yes,
some.
contractual in my mind, contractual is cleaner because it is what it is. You decide on the amount of years or whatever, the amount of money. And the thing about spousal support, it's very negotiable. You could be like, I'll give you more in assets to not pay you spousal support. I'll take on more debt to not pay you spousal support. It's way more negotiable than child support is. Child support is for the children. Spousal support, you can really do a lot of things with spousal support.
And if it's contractual, you can't go back and modify that, correct?
Not for any reason.
For any reason. So that's you are in a contract for this amount of
It
time.
is it is in stone. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else should people know?
About divorce or divorce, getting a divorce.
Anything you want.
Try not to do it. How about that?
Try not to do like go to therapy your whole marriage so you don't ever get there. Be honest with one another, work it out, right?
I would say, I'm in my second marriage and both my husband and I didn't want our divorced against our wills, put it that way. We have spent every year of our marriage trying to be better partners to prevent any potential divorce going forward. We worked at it really, really hard. Um, I'm not saying marriage should be hard, but you should still have to work at it, if that makes sense.
Well, we're two individual people and
Mhm,
navigating that, you
mhm.
know, is not easy.
One thing that I think that people get really hung up on is Hollywood gives us this expectation that marriage is going to be rainbows and unicorns and all that kind of thing, and that person should make us happy, you know, right?
Yes.
And we all know marriage is not rainbows and unicorns, but
It only is when you're in the infatuation stage
correct.
anyway.
Um, and people don't want to hear this, and this is my Christian influence here. One of the one of the techniques of staying married is you have to sacrifice. You have to be sacrificial. You have to have sacrificial love for that other person. You both bring 100% of yourselves to the marriage, whether your spouse is bringing 100% or not. So sometimes your spouse is worn out and they're bringing 20, you're still showing up you're still bringing your 100%. It's not transactional. That's what I'm trying to say. Hollywood makes marriages look like they're transactional. If you give 50%, I'll give 50%. No, I'm gonna give 100% whether you're giving anything or not. And that's a sacrificial commitment that we bring to the marriage that the world does not understand. Even
Right.
Christians don't understand that, right?
Mhm.
So, to not be divorced, how do you how do you die to self and bring a sacrificial, person to your marriage?
Mhm.
I think that's the key is living sacrificially, being mutually submissive to one another, you know?
We should follow this up with, like, how to have a good marriage, right? Because Tom and I talk about this all the time as, Tom does a men's group every Saturday morning. He does deep personal work.
Yeah,
I do personal work. I think that has been our success is that we both work on ourselves individually and together.
yeah.
Certainly good communication skills, which I would like to teach the world how to communicate cleanly because
Mhm.
we mix up our what we think is our data with our feelings, with our judgments. We don't ever sometimes even know how to articulate what we want in a way where someone can give it to us or we can negotiate, right? And so I think all of those things are so important in not just having a marriage, but having a good marriage.
Yeah.
And there are lots of people out there who are married, but they're just kinda married legally, they don't have a good relationship, they just had to put up with each other relationship, I don't
They're roommates is what they
Yeah,
are. They're
yeah,
roommates. And I think my husband was telling me, he says there's an 80-20 rule, I think, and help me see if I can say it right. We get married how does it work? And 80% of what we get married to someone fulfills us, but 20% of maybe what they have is not what we appreciate or whatever. And when things go bad, we go out and look for somebody who gives us the 20% that we weren't getting before from the other person, and that ends up not being good either, right? And
right,
I think one of the greatest things I learned was that different, not wrong. Like, my spouse doesn't have to be like me. Like, I sometimes, because of my personality, maybe Sandy, you can understand this, you're like, "I've got it figured out. Do it my way, and we'll all get along," kinda thing. Obviously, this is the way forward,
do it,
or, people don't see it that way. People
right,
have different personalities, and they see through their lens of their baggage, their emotional whatever, their personality, their experiences, and they might see a situation 100% different, but it doesn't mean it's wrong.
mhm.
And sometimes people would rather be right than be in a relationship. They will sacrifice their relationship to be right. And that, I think, is a problem. We
I
have to
think that's where you yeah, that's where you have to be willing to go, "I'm gonna submit my way of doing this, my perspective, my feelings to consider somebody else's feelings, perspective," right? To consider how they're feeling around that, how they're doing. I always like we've done a lot of, marriage weekends. We're actually hoping to create a new one for people and working with some people on that. And I don't know where I saw this. I don't know where I got this, but I remember being part of that kind of experience and having one person at this end and one person at this end. And then the person who was facilitating said, now, is there anyone in your life, like at an early age, told you something that has stuck with you that's difficult? Okay, a teacher, right? A coach, a parent, a sibling, right? And all of a sudden, these two people have all of these people to hear the message through. So when I'm talking to you, I'm talking through all of my filters and all of your filters.
Yeah,
And that person, and you can't, like, we get so many people in the middle in this when we facilitate this experience that the people can't even hear each other
right.
because they're just hearing all these other messages. And so to clean that out of the way and to recognize, I mean, that's why I think personal work is so important because I need to recognize like what filter am I operating out of? And then what filter am I seeing my husband in that he may not be in at all? It's all my experiences, all my filters that are projecting
Mhm.
that. It's a lot of work.
It's a
But I
lot.
think good marriages, like the work is really worth it. You know,
Totally.
Tom and I every week have a time where we have several different boxes of cards. You don't have to have boxes of cards. You can look stuff up in ChatGPT or some other AI tool or the internet, but we have cards that ask us questions. And you would think after 24 years, like, how much is there that we need to discover, that we're going to discover about one another? But it's so interesting that even though we might have even answered a question 6 months ago, things have occurred, or we've come to realize that we actually have a different perspective on the way we answer that question.
Yeah.
Or we're, because we're discovering something different about ourselves, or one another, or and so I just think that that time of being able to, like, dig in. I mean, there's stories that we'll tell each other that we've never told each other before, not because we didn't want to, but it's just never really come up in something. And then it's very informative and revealing around, wow, I see now why you think this way, or
Yeah.
why you would do something that way because of that experience. It's not always bad, right? Like, there can be good experiences you're talking about as well, but you get to see, like, the joy and the pain and the heartache and the struggle of someone's life when you take time to really sit down and do stuff like that. And sometimes the question will come up and I'm like, that is such a lame question. I'm not, next question. Or we've answered that 5 times, not going to answer it any different. Next question. So we're always looking for better questions. But, I think stuff like that, it does really take work. But, a really good marriage is a really good thing and really worth it.
Yeah.
When you've experienced a bad one, the practice marriage, right? And now you're experiencing something really good. I don't know about you, but I want to hold on to that and I want to work at it.
Mhm.